다들이 아주 그 조던 군입을 봐.
Right.
안에 저기 저지 돈에 남발랭게서 제약이 고급 중들이야. 안에 가보시라서 쉬하다 그냥 참대 배우들이야. 예. 그수주에
I'm very happy to be together with you at this gathering that was organized by Karma Droden Kunchab and Kagu Droden Kunchab. And very happy to see you all. Welcome.
안에 예동 예로리아 아주 최저리아 아주 그 로동국이 최저리아 저 걸으제 이제 최저의 추주십시오 최저 멤버들도 디나 중국민도 자자
Lassa?
제가 달라마 디두산 냠뇽 사제 안다린데 캄바처분들이 레지
Lassa?
다들 계시셔야 이제 중요한 거다
Lassa?
안 간다야 다른 미세 talk 지어스 예 거선 다이미는 talk the topic 디가레슨 topic 미세 개민도 안데 라메다 교랑 가르시나 드그레스 드레송도 다 가르시나 드그레스도 양디디즈 지신디신데 매버지
Lassa?
It's kind of tricky. Did you understand it? Okay.
In 2008, I had the opportunity to visit the actual Dharma center of Kagyu Droden Kunchab, and it was very crowded because I heard that not even all of the members can fit inside the Dharma center. There are so many members. And so I think Lamala gained some experience from that occasion. And this time he decided to rent a hall for the talk. And I heard that there was a talk today, but I didn't hear what the topic was. And Lamala told me there's no special topic. I could teach about whatever I wanted. I could talk about whatever I wanted. So since there's no special topic, then it becomes kind of tricky. I don't quite know what to say. I think I, the translator, don't know what to say. I might have misphrased that a little bit, but
다디 지단도 가수래. 아니 답변을 좀 formal 가수래다지 로마 지 가수래 난치 로존 셴네 칭게 망부샤에 잡지 배워대 제가 지디 formal 저 셴나 somebody 칭도
Lassa?
이내 나라시다 the person 코란 formal 시라 means and formal shell the galeristoa
Lassa?
and then you stand 지단기 아니 가르 양왕감 부근지 주루바 아니 디 엔다간다 참미르가들 미세 잡아야 되비스도 차리아래 다나신 공 미지체나 안 노쇼리아 표가 나무 상계비 다 지당 상계기 때문에 안디 나는 표 나무 상계비 때문에 뱅게 아쉬워진 두 차리아래 rin du sane kyansu nalone kashelia den konda dan jeba yeba samarbe da dus chali are sam dus chengdo and rin du san di junzel dene ane ngarainea ta tadabadu chi gegablia gegab nizilya ado rotuyo mane ta dinane amerikalia ta ting tari di sumbare jeza misegi kachwe ngege samle nalolia kyawa chujupal ta anji amerikegi devati samarvada ji lemyo devati sabu yewi inza degi gyunzen dene araine yana yandu de yonto beruchik dechi chungwa de liang zidu shuye shuai
Lassa? I think most of the attendees of today's talk are students of Buddhism, and therefore I thought it would be suitable to teach on some kind of formal topic. But the challenge is that I myself am not a very formal person. So we'll see what happens with regard to that. But in general, it is wonderful to be here in the United States of America because, as you know, His Holiness the 16th Gelung Karmapa had a very strong connection with the United States of America, and I think that he was one of the earliest masters to strongly propagate the teachings of Buddha Dharma in the West. And so, furthermore, I think that there are many of the students gathered here who had a very strong connection with His Holiness the 16th Gelung Karmapa. In terms of my own travels, I've only been able to visit 2 foreign countries so far in my life, the United States, of course, being one of them. And since the United States had such a profound connection with His Holiness the 16th Gelung Karmapa, I personally regard the U.S. as a place that would be very beneficial for me to return to again and again. Sumba, right, yeah. Right, and so this, of course, being my 3rd trip to the United States.
And Pelia that the Reda Kajue Per Kaji Jonia Daganda Ji the Long the Dongcha Ringly Summerway the Dongcha Ringlia and Ji Che Yamlecha some of that Ji Cheshogi Ji Kajue Lobjon Chia some of the Masebe and Digi Susu Gule Jarche Susu Niji Tsoadan Jar and Susu Gule Jarche the Jig Yamlen Chia said that Dujubangu should dance and the Jig Dakandar has a long don't charge in the others never and the Indusane and a Tade Julia and that long don't charm on Bujilia the Jiggy Kashre Pumizegi Nyamne Chavatan Dana Singi experience somewhere that Cheshavek and the Chedi and the Jinzabulim but Samaraya to share chair Chipa and the Kwashigar which is the launch air that is to Juria to do something though.
In the snowy land of Tibet, the Buddha Dharma has remained for over 1,000 years. And so during the millennium and then some that the Dharma has remained in Tibet, the Dharma has been practiced in a pure and authentic way, in a way in which it wasn't just an object of study or intellectual endeavor, but in a way in which it was really applied to the hearts and minds of the people who practiced it. Many individuals practiced the Buddha Dharma with great authenticity and sincerity, fully embraced by the experience of compassion. And it was this way for over 1,000 years. And the era at which we've arrived now is one in which this tradition of Buddha Dharma, this experience of Buddha Dharma that was practiced by Tibetan people for over 1,000 years is now being shared widely throughout the world for everyone to enjoy. This is the point in time at which we have arrived now.
아직 잠니지 거를 시엔 증명로
라상.
잠니지 거 아마시디 가르시에는 드그레스데 안데 지신 디시면게는 지도와 아디 괜찮았어 안다드린도 잠니지 거를 지시에비나 증명로 삼정도스
라상.
다마시 뒤주 가서래 다들 지원면도 다 나간다 드린 아주 간지제래샤
So since I've been given free rein to choose any topic, I think that it would be good for us to discuss loving kindness and compassion.
No topic, no time. Daddy. 다 간다지 최 냠는 근데 시험입니다. 최 냠는 지사디 안지 가르쳐다 투주를 써야지다. 망부지기 formal practice 지하게 투주를 써야지. 그래서你们 지금 나눠야 당가공 그지미냐 나조 야나 공다를 그지네야. 다지 투주 써야지. 냠는 지하도 지겨하래. 다데 야부시라래. That is battery charge. 간다지 니마지 나로래야 쉽지기 다 exhaustic som으로 내가 먹고 싶지제 exhaustic 갈래 쉽지가 다나 신기 지sem대 주부를 차디에 민상 난지 formal practice 주제제 다 간다 아주 sem대 마지 쉬어야지당 투어야지 Adrish Chalia, formal practice chadi, I wish I used some tongue of those. Tuzur dizzy, Suzu Gala, Tuzuruchi, Suzu Sem, Takazurti, Suzu relaxed chak. Lusim Niga, relaxed chak, Tuzush Dandi, the catch of Stali something.
Of course, one of the ways that we practice the Dharma is in the context of formal practice. And formal practice is something that we need to make time for. We might set aside time in the morning or in the evening. But some formal practice, I think, is very good to do because it's similar to a time of day where we take to recharge our batteries. Throughout the day, we become very exhausted. We have many things to do. Our minds become quite disturbed sometimes due to all of this. And therefore, it's very helpful to set aside some time where we're only concentrating on relaxing our body and mind. This helps to pacify our mind and to tame our mind. And I think that for this reason, formal practice is very important.
다이미네야 최저 냠는 자사디 relax 차다. 다가는 신기지 that relax shadan dana si pa this ma ji shu 시와르 차 대점 많이 붙여 대점도 많이 봐. 다 대래 락버지 가서 춤대 돼야지. 야 아주 삼동가데 쉽게 좀 차려야.
맞아.
다디 컨디션은 다디 조딩 아주기 emotionalism. 다 dealing 샤스물 아주 심. 다 녀모데 바지 녀모데야 선한다도 아나 녀모당 지 가르다 다 dealing 샤라나 가사래.
라서?
다 대상 오늘인데 벽에도 인지시라 세초만 됐어야는 아니야 이제 당 아니 개발스kem 다 드네주 다디 개좀 쉽차려 딜링지아디 요몬 다 이모셔널 사디 안 삼성 아들 심데 삼성 아 도박하려 용데 열었으나 당 아주 녀모사디 바 razum juroina and then as emotional jiba tab debarch lagu ardi yimbine da nyomo sadi pena mari badr chimina emotional sorbi chorwan ru chimi biche ko mari sadi yang quran ji kashwe asu emotional thon mari ba imi da samsang yung ardi yimbine da di dinan include chetu yena mena hakumdo da kandar 다 녀모를 봐. 녀모 대하서란 장도. 하나. 녀모의 냠도 다 가서 봐. 내가 제서 말다. 디 딜리 양한 수지 년대지 삼동과디 개좀 차리기 위해서.
Awesome. However, our practice shouldn't be done just for the sake of relaxing. Relaxing is, of course, one component, pacifying the mind and so forth. But we need to accomplish an aim that is superior to that. And I think that one of the aims that we also need to accomplish in this way is working with our emotions, learning to deal with our emotions, or applying an antidote to our mental afflictions. So it's interesting when we look at the terminology here. In Tibetan, you have the term nyunmong. In Sanskrit, you have the term klesha. Sometimes when we speak very loosely, we say the word emotions in English, but it might be helpful to note that that doesn't quite map on 100% to the concept we're talking about here when we say klesha, something that disturbs the mind. Because ignorance, for example, or non-awareness is considered a klesha, but we wouldn't normally speak of that as an emotion, maybe sometimes, but probably not most of the time. So it's good to just bear that in mind as we proceed through our conversations. In any case, I think that our Dharma practice must definitely serve as an antidote to the mental afflictions, and therefore working with and learning to deal with our emotions becomes an important purpose of our practice.
제자지 spiritual practice, Dharma practice 시아디, 최초 냠내 시아디, that 방법이 디사 commercial purpose somewhere. That's there is sometimes that is 가서 when dundaji weekend of the spiritual resort and the change.
Lasa
energy 가서 이제 쉬게 봐 meditation chair relax yoga chair relax chair and the spiritual massage 도 당제 네 차 sometimes this 기본으로지 루부스 대본으로지 늦지와 sometimes
Lasa
다이면 오늘 전에 이제 최냠는 가서 다지 오늘 제일 대자만 들려만 봐. 대지 뒤에 대버지당 뒤 가서지 기본으로지 여행해 봐야 말았어.
Lasa
다디 intensive exercise somewhere. 다지 정달 nembosh라 쳐야지. 다 가서 intensive exercise somewhere. 지 낭sem이야 다 간다 exercise 하지 다디 참참 미망고 찔려야지 이 기부 용어 말다 내가 싫어 용어 말다 not easy
That's
잘했잖아 최저 동안에 아주기 배는 곰시 닝버스 말বে 다지 박사 닝버드 좀 요아 당시 박사 싸버지 곰시 싸버지 아주 녀모 발이야 곰바 닝버드 좀 가르숑 당시 안 곰시 싸버지 잠바다 니지나 가리나 다 간다지 셈리야 곰바 싸버지 곰지 싸버지 아 김배주체고 예비인사 다디 not easy. 알하버도 지 최저하는 가셔서나 내가 가서 personal mentality som을 다지 미시가 거라 런신 거라 교원 동그서 기저봐 다디 우마이는 디스카라 가버시바 다디 사지 시리 돈디스 검겹 냠레체 딘데 돈 교원 조도 사지 여러다 나서 다티 대외경 깔아 가고 싶지. 버지 지다 시가 살에 난 딩에 시가라도 버지 교와 동안 매버지. 난 아주 남지 당한 딩에 시가래 제자다 섭시 미도 살을 거 봐. 다 이민의 최소 나는 시에비민 다디 딩에 시가래 살자만 다가나 고捐도나 안디 교와 동과지. 당 안디 소주 잡고 하루 처예비 인사 다디 레나 버지 말아.
Lasa.
And they understand the intensive exercise. Someone about that. Shirakaji Kale Jagwaji, the jeans or something.
Sometimes these days, spirituality is used for commercial purposes. Sometimes we have presentations such as the chance to go to a spiritual resort for a weekend. We might do some meditation, feel very nice, do some yoga, maybe get a little massage.
Spiritual.
Yes, a spiritual massage. And, you know, we use this to replenish ourselves and refresh ourselves. And it sounds very nice. But actually, there's no guarantee that true Dharma practice will necessarily feel refreshing. It actually involves some intensive exercise for our mind. In fact, sometimes Dharma practice can be rather unpleasant, uncomfortable, and not easy. The reason why this is the case is because Dharma practice involves changing our old habits and letting them go and replacing them with new habits. So in terms of old habits, we have to learn how to let go of our destructive emotions or mental afflictions, and then instill in us new habits of loving kindness, compassion, and so on, and apply effort in that. And that isn't easy. In particular, Dharma practice actually has something to do with transforming our own personal character or our own personality, our personal nature. And that can be difficult. Of course, we have the recent observations from modern science that talk about how meditation can change our brain and so forth, but I think what the Dharma is really talking about is more difficult than that. It goes to changing our character. Sometimes we might have the defense, well, I'm not going to change this because this is who I am. That's my character. So I'm not going to change that. But Dharma practice says, no, that's not tenable. That's not a tenable defense, as it were. Because if your character involves flaws that are harmful, then the Dharma says that is what needs to be transformed. That's what you need to put effort into letting go. And that's a difficult process. It's not easy, it can be intense.
드레인주 산에 다가르 덴덴드지 시가 쓰면 미전신 더 미 섭리야 요침비미나 다 미시가 쓰면 다 딜레 personality 딜레 교환하지 엄마 미지 콘도 사버지미나 제리아 지미 창심 제로 차 연주산에 그 personality 거는 교환하지 그래서 용도 도와
참샘
미 창심제 당부 콘도 사고 아니 지 차도 첨부를 제비미 아예 첨부 다 제마야 클릭클릭 그 가수래지 정다름 체연주산에 미디 우마들이 미신다를 차지
라서
다 간다지 미 창심제 미지 차도 준주 아니지 미야 함불 sommer다지 킹종제 리비치 쳐도와 대차연주산에 고랑기 미들레 교환주가를 고랑 미즈들레 교환주도와
라서
제자 남중아 저기 마부지 karma 쉐리가래 karma 스두산 레자 된 교화동안 매버지 다음에는 미딩 교화 침비입니다 에 고라 디전시 레된 교환 줘야지 간달 미디 교화 침비나 미디 미즈데 교환 줘야지 제가 디게 가서 가르쳐 버스나 give hope sommer버다지 가솔이야 제와당 가솔 제와여지당 가솔은 딜럼이여지 벌써 땡겨요 삼정도스 간달 수수디 수수 네법 텔레 네법 현실이야 교환줘야지
라서
예 다다미 참 미망버지기 수술이야 this 마가와르 지게데비미나 아니 안되지 제마야 미망버지 수술 가버차요 이지 차요 다들 주산 디준데네 다들 조디 지 르린 교와 땅부디 팽겨만다
라서
지 리슈얼 제 무드라 제 다음에 제네 다디 다 칼라카브와
라서
that speech 지 mantra 네 다나 신기 가수지 compassion 지 카르마 렌자동 망부 지 세븐디 팽거만 다 간다 조디 and similar 교와 당체 아니 similar 교와 당체 수수의的人性가리 못들이야 교환 하지 근데 몇 수씩 하지
So I think the Dharma is definitely about transforming our personality in some sense, because if we're someone who has a strong character that involves anger or lots of jealousy, then that's something that needs to be transformed by the Dharma. And later on we can become actually someone who doesn't have much anger, who is not very jealous, who is humble, and so forth. So, by changing ourselves as a person, then our life is transformed as well. In Buddhism, we talk about karma a lot, and sometimes we interpret that to mean that everything is fixed in place. We can't change anything because it's all been arranged by karma. But that's not the case. We can change our mind, we can transform our mind, transform our personality through the Dharma, and by transforming our mind and personality through the Dharma, we can change our life. So this can actually give us hope and show us that there is actually a future ahead of us full of potential, full of positive potential. For example, we might not be someone who is well-liked at present, but if we transform our habits, then we can be actually someone who is liked and regarded well by others. But to get to this level or state of transformation, it's not going to benefit if we just try to change our body alone or our physical demeanor. If we just were to rely on engaging in rituals and doing mudras from a physical perspective, it would be difficult to bring a true transformation about. In the same way, it's not beneficial to just change our speech to saying mantras or uttering the word compassion over and over again and so forth. What we really need to work on is our mind. That's the main thing. Through changing our mind, we change our personality. Through changing our personality, we change our life. And that is what we should put effort toward.
semgim cheadim kashbutaji 냠네 차디 가수에 다디 다기 녀모사데 지 가수에 지 텔레야 지 미튠비 쳐다 미튠비 쳐 섬르가다지 그래서 나오다 튠쇼 다 유엔덴즈 야게 동아다 미튠비 쳐게 간다라 다 방스스는 장도 간다 개겐데 줄이야 아주 마 가수에 개겐세야 다디 개좀 차대요 다들이야 지금 녀모사디 아주 지금 미디미 쳐기다 개겐 섬르가 다든지 영원히 와래 지당기 시당 섬르가 다지 다 가르쳐 나온다 페나지 시당 사르보다 되샤 사르 되게 지 텔레비냐 간다라 직세나 지 positive side negative side 니가 유에서는 자도야나 could be changed somewhere 다지 람도 케스 당아주 추적게 시에는 람케르지래 야나 직디 수술이야 탑 기업 정보입니다 내고 가수에 양지 가수에 좋아서 기라요 되봐 다들 집에서 용디야 다 강들이야 이내야 다다 지 대야지 수수기 당연 되실라
강달 소스
No, nothing. Oh, that's that one. Stop.
Okay. So we could talk about the disturbing emotions or mental afflictions as adverse factors in our experience, something we need to transform or dispel, and then we could talk about positive qualities like loving kindness and compassion as harmonious factors that we need to promote and develop. But some of the emotions, such as anger, are not as one-sided. They can be spoken of sometimes to have positive aspects, negative aspects, maybe sometimes aspects that are both positive and negative, or aspects of anger that could be changed, that could be brought to the path and transformed into an assistant or support. So sometimes if we're able to skillfully relate to our emotions, we can bring them to the path and use them as supports.
Overwhelmed control control lamdo kiasa kala khabsharwa
Lasa.
da tros ke lamdo kiasa di ji susulia da ji kala khansam ge ji karwe control ji ye ba thane de ji a ji min ju san di ju ze de da de le ibne ya karwe jimbe shi da azu yage chi ne ane nubati yage tongwa tongne yong tuyaji ma do 당분에 de yong tuyaji this covering this.
Lasso. However, when we speak about taking the kleshas as the path or bringing them to the path, we should know that we're talking about a different situation than being controlled by our kleshas, which is usually the way that we relate to them. Usually it's the kleshas controlling us and not us controlling the kleshas. If we're completely overwhelmed by and governed by our mental afflictions, then it's going to be very difficult for us to bring them to the path or take them as the path. So in order for us to be able to do that, we need to have some control over our kleshas, our disturbing mental events, and that is something that comes about through gradual process. It's very difficult to gain this ability from the very beginning.
pena control sa gablia ta control sane digwa masane digwa ta dindi de ji ji susul choice ji that new better choice, new better talk.
Lasso?
Sana do, Masana do. Madobe and to control line Golia, Rameba, Masakamed, Digi, Nedar Chumbi, and Shara, the new Toa, Marchesa, Tanayanta, Tambodi, under Digi, New Toa.
Lasso? So ultimately, we have to be able to get to a place where we have the ability to relate to our anger in a way that we're not just at the whim of our own anger. So if we come to the point where we can choose between getting angry or not getting angry, then that means we've gained some ability. But if we fall into anger in a helpless way, where we don't have any choice or control whatsoever, then we still have not gained any power of our own or ability in relation to our emotions.
Kanda Jinji Shuadi, Kanda Numonium Diasadi, Azulia, Kashre. The Cho Nini summer. Atangazudaji, Chadichi, the Cho Nini, or some Tonga Shagaras. Numonium Dena.
Lasso?
That Angudi Haresana. The Chida Nangi some Stambi, that Delia Chi that Digi Chida Nansadi, young Azunam Gun, Chi Mobotan, Nang Sem the Digi Kitty Mane. I made that dear Zo Delia, Ken of Nuber needs Hango. Chigde, young Azunam Gun Kajure, Chilone, Kada, formal practice mambu che dana si ji chamba ji meditation che dana si ji kasu twesam che che ni ji thone ta nga zu ji nyomol ya nyembo khade ja nyubad de nga zu chu ji collect some of the Dribichigare, Tadijigre. Tadene, Nibati, Karcha or Sona, Nibadita, Numobaria, Moshia, some Numobasada, Kandishima, Moshia Chida, Dana Singi, Moshiene, Tadiji, Kashre. Numo badang, the social assembly a distant summer. See, Dantar of Shatuas. Tadi, Keswich Chadi honors.
Lasso?
Kesi, Mazu Chilo and Daji, Chamba the Nigeras of Mamboji, Gombe, that tuned with Chevy Bina, Nang Semlia, Semda, the Numo Delia, Zikaru, distance to be Shabby chair. And Dana Yana just same the young body kind of almost like inseparable with Cha, the Rib Chavi Mina. And Dana she done a young as it is so that the revulsion somewhere. The Yomoliaji, Kashre, that you love Sambasan and Rando, Shambalova Sambasan and Rando. That the Jiji, maybe Mina, that the Tene, Chi Nambalia. Azuji, Mongos having me, Tendam Korania, Numolia, Number Jotuachi, and Numolia to the Kakavashades.
Lasso. Tene Gelo Kesa di Numo. Lasso.
Yes. That make distance and other shallows and that.
Lare, the Rempa need a cheat, Dang Lasso. You could say that there are two stages of relating to the kleshas or working with the kleshas. And whenever I say kleshas, for those of you who aren't familiar, we could say that means mental afflictions or disturbing emotions, destructive emotions, negative mental patterns, and so forth, is all klesha. So when we relate to the kleshas, or try to transform the kleshas, there are two basic stages. We could call one an outer stage and one an inner stage. The outer stage involves the formal aspect, where we engage in meditation, we engage in the forms and following the instructions of meditation, we engage in study, as well as reflection and contemplation about the meaning of what we have been taught. And through this, we collect the methods or tools that serve as antidotes, or that will serve as antidotes to the mental afflictions. At the second stage, that's the more internal level, where we actually recognize the mental afflictions that are present in our own mind stream. Having recognized them, we can then start to set some distance between our own mind on the one hand and the mental affliction on the other hand. And it's very important to have this distance be present between our mind and the mental afflictions as a result of our practice. If we practice and practice, but still end up in a place where there's no separation between our mind and the mental afflictions at all, no distance between these two things at all, then our practice really isn't penetrating through to the key point. So to help this along, to help there to eventually, through our practice, arise a distance between our mind and the mental afflictions, we need what is called revulsion. We need some attitude of disgust or revulsion toward our mental afflictions and a desire to part from them. If we don't have that revulsion, then it's going to be difficult for us to get past the mere outer stage of just going through the forms of meditation. It will be difficult for us to arrive at the ultimate purpose of meditation in terms of parting from our mental afflictions.
Mental emotion, the disturbing emotion, and that telling me now, the missosulia. Chicago, new position somewhere. Signomo, yeah. The situation Susuman or something.
That's all.
And Dana Sing Jidang and Yomon Tangasun, you so Zawe Yomon, the Shashan and Timusum Shigare. That did the Yawachan Wishayarva.
That's all.
And the Shashan and Timusum de that Karsure Dom Sir Dom that Zawe Yomon San Andando, that the Dom of the Awashasha. That this was sometime be now. And it's Sherandi, Jose, Montreal large, and the Jazadi, Digi, Daji, Lignegi, Yachon, this Calhabus.
Lassa?
That the name Timusade and Timusada Karime, that the Bejan and the Mangus Sheshorva.
Lassa?
Lame the Mangusunga, the inner deep in government, that is also Lia. More travel Jidang, Yamsun to school are there. That day, you are how should do. Lassa, the Karin and what's your money, the telling Yambodin you pass to say. And then you stand the Kangage, that's so sweet, just on desert, that in your more disreggy, Kashway. That kind of love that day. New position stand down to Yana. That you think some must have covered on the medicine to strengthens.
That's all.
And the Indusane, that Namju, so the Susole, Angelia, Yomo Kar Shusher, Shervina, that dinner was some Yambotian, Kishio, that didn't never scare me.
That's all.
Kantarian Nazugi, Jacob Yaji, dealing with mental emotion, somewhere that disturbing emotion. The chair Goblia Tangburan successful child, 얘가 더야 난지
That's all.
다디 인지미지 가줄이야 가수에 무투이네 지 가수에 냠내 시작 다디 지 뉴버 작보스는 장도 매버 작보스는 장도 진짜 인도 없이 거야 돼 encouragement 거야 지 지게 방과를 지 방과 지 중에 미네 아니 양결 가수에지 but 지 방과 샤워는 단도 주 제가 try you need to try 10 times
That's all.
10 times you lose 100 times somebody보다 내리지 되게 가수에 진짜 거야 쉽지 개좀 잘하는 도스
That's all.
진짜 매비는 미망고치 당분에 다 직찬 오즈다 니숨 다 지가수에 not successful 되네 아니 바지 다 참샤샤
That's all.
아드인비서 되게 매미치 그뒤네야 에너지 소소기 에 묘모베월에 좀고 무구루 삼바르지 고구르네서마다 안 사라인데 좀 들으지 무구루 삼바르지 삼바르고 개좀있어
Bowing down.
야 bowing down 다 이랑 아주 다 이라 주주마다 오케이
People have different emotional makeups. So that means that what's a strong mental affliction for some person isn't necessarily going to be the strongest mental affliction for a different person. Basically, the Buddhist teachings talk about 3 poisons of the mind, pointing to the 3 root mental afflictions of desire, aggression, and bewilderment, which of course can be translated in various ways. And these 3 in turn have many subcategories in the teachings, but these 3 are kind of like the central network for all of the other disturbing emotions or mental afflictions to develop. If we look at aggression or anger in particular, we can see that it is perhaps the easiest mental affliction to recognize and also the easiest to identify as problematic. But if we look at desire, it might be a little bit difficult to recognize, more difficult to recognize, and particularly sometimes more difficult to identify as problematic in comparison with anger. And then with regard to bewilderment or ignorance, that is a mental affliction that is taught a lot about in the texts and by the great masters, but just teachings from texts and masters aren't enough. We need to recognize its presence in our own mind stream, in our own experience, and bring that into our practice. But that in turn is very difficult. It can run very deep in our mind stream. And so there's no uniformity with regard to which kleshas are the strongest in which individuals. In any case, when we set about to transform our negative emotions, it's very difficult to gain success, as it were, or to gain victory from the very beginning. And therefore, what's really important is for us to have a strong sense of resolve, have a strength of heart, and have a sense of encouragement and fortitude when we set about to work with our mind and work with our emotions, because what will inevitably happen is that we're going to experience defeat. We're going to try to relinquish our negative emotions or try to transform our mind, and we're going to fail. So we should have the attitude that if we fail 10 times, that just means we're going to try 100 more times. If we didn't give rise to that firm encouragement of ourselves in the beginning, then it might be challenging, because maybe we could take one defeat or one instance of failure, but then after 2 or 3 instances of failure, we'd be pretty much ready to give up. So having this strong resolve in the beginning and an attitude that we're not just going to completely bow down to our negative emotions is very important.
And 묘모 살 this chikarwe shu the chichung do somebimina rangi ngangi chi karashwe tuncho de yende samare sambe de yage yonda le la rush paji yongdo le la wan rush
Laso.
paji yongdo sonda 다들 당게 쉬어나시 잠니지 사데 다나시 아주 상물을야 참바데 니지 사변스는 장도 야나 참바데 니지게데 감저디 아주 상물을야 아기류네 바지 예데 버지
Laso.
장게 땡게스 예데 버지 드리 차리야래 그래서 세리베지 가수에 sympathy empathy 사드지 하드웨어 지 사도와 the level jigar is
Lasso.
ta ganda ta yimbine ta di situation samarwe so so ge chalong chumbe ge da kuryu da ne da le den che ko ga shwe yuan zhu ye chi an da na xin gi an ga zhe ge du ne ji ga shwe 이제 배 샴페인 자왈이야 인volve 치두산에 다지 아주 되제 가르 지 현안럽치 야나 리스크 현안럽치 딘데럽치 제제 안다 야나 진디 나라 제바 미두 삼럽치 this is not my business somewhere 다 딘데럽치 나라 주도 미두 삼럽치 딘데지 삼르 당체 안 레라버치 딱한들 on off summer with social system this year imne the off cha yo bchi yuan dra yo bchi den chari yore it's just the junze dene nga jogi jamni ji ni bodi saben yo bodi kandes ya ge dang go yo kandes jeje ning ba di du shu ro di ning do lak sam ge ni ba kontor dong go yo da di nga jogi ka shu sam do ade kesim cha de
Laso. Tene ranking anki payale lagares. Sunya de karikola re.
no
Laso. No. Ranking kashe ranking anki.
delame da di thingi ge yoresa
Alright.
thingi thamu
Laso.
te marbe
Nyumong shukche chung yores.
어제네 야
Laso. Nyumong shukche chung yore. Kashe ranking anki. Laso.
당연 좀 마시셔야 돼.
Laso.
가르쳤다.
Okay.
오케이.
So, when we talk about the harmonious or conducive,
엄마말 요모도 슈충을 치미나?
Laso? Oh,
되네 리베는 주 요알라.
Zangchoki.
Alternative.
Laso. Rangi. Laso. Right, so when the force of our mental afflictions does begin to lessen, then it becomes easier and easier for the positive qualities of our mind to flourish. So, when we talk about loving kindness and compassion, these are qualities that all of us have in our minds already present from the time of our birth. We all have these qualities innately. Science these days tells us that our brains are hardwired for positive emotions such as sympathy, empathy, and so forth. But we get into different situations, such as the conditions in which we were raised, the environment in which we were raised, and things change. And another thing that can serve as an obstacle to the development of our loving kindness and compassion is sometimes we're afraid of trying to help others. We might initially have a wish to try and help others, but then hesitate because we think there's too much risk if we actually try to engage in helping others. Or we say to ourselves, this is none of my business, so therefore I'm just going to disengage. So sometimes it's as if there were an on-off switch to the loving kindness and compassion in our heart, and we choose to leave it on the off setting. Therefore, contemplating to ourselves about how we can further empower the loving kindness and compassion that is already present within ourselves further energize the pure intention that we possess is very important.
다드네 다드시라 두주시라 맵자 아드린 주사네 간다 다 도나도도르디 이제 compassion 자디 지 아주 남유지 sympathy somewhere empathy 자 다되게 될래 지 먼저 다들이가 more dedicated somewhere more involved in action somewhere 다들 간다 디 미신다가 동해를 understanding 자당 디지 가르에 텔레야 다가르에 샤차웨기 삼바자마 힘바 저니 안에 간다 동해에 심제 사람장도 아나 다간다 심제 버리부디 지 차셰 교르제 다들이지가 동안에 간다 지 자와 수면으로지 이는 배하로도 지지 그 고가래 되지 요머체 다들 인도스탄다 대야 안텐제베기 니지태야 되네 지 가수에 지 디도 소화에 버서머베 심지어 탐제리야 안텐제베다 동해쟁 심지어 탐제리야 안텐제지 가수에 공부하디 다 개점심 차리 얼바 라서 인도스탄 디교제 되네 다들 베신 어디 야겐 로가데 수수sem기 이버도 베신 야겐 로고 주신세 다들에 다 두주시라면인데 온주 롱지 여러 지스들의 송도 제가 온주 롱딘도잉
라서 It seems that we're running out of time for our session together. So the main point that I wanted to make about compassion is that compassion is a little bit more than just sympathy or even just empathy. It's something that entails more dedication and a heart that entails more involvement in action. So compassion isn't just the mind or heart that understands or feels for the suffering of others or has warm sentiments toward others. Rather, compassion is the mind that realizes that the sufferings of others are actually a part of oneself. And within that attitude, the heart that bears unbearable love for sentient beings. So, therefore, to meditate on compassion is to further cultivate and nurture this awareness that one's happiness and suffering is the happiness and suffering of all sentient beings. The happiness and suffering of all sentient beings is the happiness and suffering of oneself. And when we meditate in this way, our compassion will increase, and it will increase step by step in gradual stages. So that is what I'd like to say about compassion for this morning. And additionally, I've been requested to give a lung, or a scriptural transmission, for the text that I composed on the preliminary practices, brief recitations for the 4 preliminary practices. So I will recite this scriptural transmission now.
상계 남주 최대 좀 소된 이동이 저도 전부도 라바지는 저는 많이 많이 경영 원하는 담지 다는데 이버도 다녀만 다녀서만 녀배서 라면 뭐지 디제다 버저 도서 오늘이 다보다랑 좀 이버도 지루서 도그런다 예라오는 하는 집에서 하면 그래서 랑게 정보는 맞으려는 나도 오늘 وجرسات اسمه من باب 탐지기에서 하는 것도 너무 니도 데벨이 돌아다니는 명만 시작하도 도전 넘어다 이제 저런 냠르샤 이번에 녀만 나도 이제 샤마도 잡에서 처배지 지명하는 심정가도 다버디 버지면 더스죠 이제 저도 메레저는 신조르 교르는 어저 저번에 가면 메레지가 가르쳐 보는 Permanent dead in the visual element to the mission, yes, sanking of the journey, the Tadam Church, one German material, even or museum to Zanian Razon, but the Josin and all the Jillian, Mented Yogum Davana, Lord number so much, but Randu Job, Gusum Lama, the Gujo, 실험료도 주고 저러면 예 한번 튜민의 튜머니 내 치마도 오는 이름 라 이름 결러면 저 배만이 되는 자야는 뭐도 참 뭔가 좀 야라디바고 만나온 집에서 남아서 만나온 남아도 만나온 많은 남아도 그래서 꾸지마다 라마르를 된 기회지를 뭐 더베지 좀 들고 그래서 그래서 파워지도 많이 거를 이제 저는 모두를 다단일 버자주 비전으로 되도록 이제는 인지를 가지셔서 남아도 잘하고 이거 있는 그러면 거서 좀 나와지도 고정은 되다 라메 고정도랑 루마이즈 예매도 교블었으면 샤고 이번 질람도 라메 나와도 기도 담전 라메 우리는 제시바랑 되면 야고도 도지리 좀 뭐래서 미놈 교와서 라메니 저 자오 춘대랑 저걸 제시 망하면 원래 망하다 가면 이들 되게 수라가 주도인에 와서 그걸 좀 버자와고 다들 주사 안타리디 샌프란시스코 야 다들이디 대 가슈에 티니버데 요아 좀데 가샤 좀 생각 상만 도도 시라 가죠 안다리 America tin sumbayong be kaulia an dawa ni gilia 가서에 지 tuzu 다들 봐서 좋아하기 고급으로도 충분해 다디 고급디 다 팅당부를 차리야래 지 계급 나눠려야 이제 tuzu 중부지 나눠려야 봐서 좋아 고급 좀 팅당부를 차리야래 다디 디 레라버시요 다들 고급타 레라버시 말해 강주디 싱만 마체 지전에 신도 하고 말해 다디 가서 하고 버린다 레라버 요 말해 안데 인주스탄에 다들 이제 레마 다 투주 중부지 나눠려야 아니 고고네 이제다 투주 가서다 고급 충분히 this country 가보시라 종송스 내주사 마음발이미냐 강주 체드 예두주 만지 당투 투서를 섬섬지 나들이지 자와당 안다는 신기의 이세를 전부 다 해요.
라서 저랑 속에 체도. 라서 I'm so happy to be visiting San Francisco for the second time and very happy to see you all. And this is my third visit to the United States, but the first time, really, that I have had the opportunity to have such an extended visit. So this time I have the chance to be here for 2 months and visit various places. I'm very happy to have this opportunity, and it hasn't been an easy one to receive. I don't know if you're aware of how difficult such an opportunity is to receive, but it hasn't been easy. Something I've waited for quite a while, and therefore I'm very happy that it has come to pass, that I'm able to visit the United States for an extended period of time. And my hope and prayer and aspiration in the future is that I will be able to come back again and again for the benefit of yourselves in a similar way.
Loma Senan Jimmy, Tang Alda, Naran, Loma of Yunara Shilmindo, Naran Lama in a Shim, the Loma Yunaja Shilmindo, the Indusanata, and that Chi Yellow Narolia G. Catre, that woman was too short, the Indusana, and Tizuda Tute Chak, that's Pocoti, Majonibre, the Indusanta, Yahalea Chinchita, Yara Lumina Pachi Chinche. And Pigage wrote to Chongimina, and Chi gave Kalia Yeva Travosoria, Tuyagi, Cook Manga Yoga Sabaruchi.
That's
that Lizzie, Zawar Chibukevita Yomre. That you mean that the Yagal Levy Jelly Nat, the Lelaji, Chunama, that the lots of challenges, Marvataji. Hardship, similar with that, and Mangosi used to Sumare. That Kantaya and Tade Charimina, that is Kuyano, this Kuyano Joyevitang, and Rawan, or this Cherjoyev, number of those on the Yevi in Dustane, and Lojang and Gita, Jawasan and Rando, Melamsan and Rando, that day Drubiag, Tanya Rudus, that. Jugalia and the Kandar is a chair of drums to sell you in Dustana and the Aran Kavashachon solution.
It's been more than 15 years now since I escaped Tibet and left for India. And when I did that, I left a note on my table in Tibet, and I wrote the reason for my leaving Tibet in that letter, but I also remember what I wrote so that I can tell you. The main reason why I left Tibet was because I wasn't receiving the opportunity to meet with the many friends I have in foreign countries. Now, you could say that I couldn't meet with the many disciples that I have in foreign countries, but I don't feel so certain that I have many disciples. Can he?
No, it's okay.
Okay. So I don't know whether to call them disciples or friends. But in any case, I wasn't getting the opportunity to meet them. And my thought at that time was, if I could go to the noble land of India, which is a free country, then I would have many more opportunities to see my friends throughout the world. But after I arrived in India, it didn't work out in exactly the way I had hoped. There were lots of challenges and a lot of hardships. It wasn't easy to just automatically go and travel throughout the world and meet all my friends throughout the world. So that continued along that way for some time, but now it looks like things are opening up a little bit. It seems that there might be some more freedoms opening up. And I really feel that maybe now I'm getting closer to fulfilling my hopes and aspirations that I had made 15 years ago. So I have great trust in this.
아니 딱 간다. 그 있을 가수래 디스 가수래 가다데 lo dune leve kale lur da kama bares ziru che
Lasa?
trige yam
Lasa?
ane da dine 지 dine lo jupsi kale ya kanda chujur chi 다 간다 드르 제제 총벌에 제산도 미진나로야 지 요아 다 챌린지 방법을 총벌에 요아 먹을 총벌에 제산 다디 요아 총벌에 얘기 가수라다 지 out of my control somewhere that the 요아 동도 유엔에 요아 신데서 게 말해 다 간다 두세 다 이미네야 디 요아 신부대게 미망고질이야 가수에 다지 가수에 펜토 용배다 저어를 또 shumare 인주산에 베나 디린도 차셔빈데 가수 미망부치대야 용세 영어서 뭐 투야당 이 가수의 이미네에 대해서 가수의지 가수의 지 가수의지 가보용하다 다나 신기 셈리아 지 디기요하로 기 디기요하게 가수다 튕기는 좀세지 조토스 삼바를 두스탱도 내주산 다디 통윤주산다 오망아주지 가수에 땡에 미지나로리 요망고 심비티 다 저것도 서서르지 다 가수에지 even though out of my control but the serve good purpose some other 통도스 다들이 인주산에 간다야 그냥 상으로 돼 영대 가보시다 주슈아이
라서
아마 가보시다 슈아메 도시
라서 When I was 7 years old, I was recognized as the Karmapa, but I had no plans for this to happen. I had no preparations for this. When I was 14, I left Tibet and came to India and have gone through many challenges that entailed. So I've gone through lots of big changes in my life, and many of them have been out of my control. But nevertheless, I think that these changes can serve a good purpose. For example, I've had the opportunity to be together with you here today, and I really feel that this opportunity for us to be together today may provide you with some small condition to further increase your own joy, happiness, and well-being. And therefore, even though there have been great changes and challenges in my life, they are not for no purpose. They can be put to a good purpose and become useful. So again, I'm so happy to see you all, and thank you very much.
Thank you.